Chapter 1 Enemy. I had always wondered how I would die and what it would feel like. Death is the last mystery. Nothing can prepare you. It only happens once, but you will die. I was 16 the year that the trials were announced. It was the middle of winter, and my feet crunched softly in the freshly fallen snow. My breaths made little clouds in front of me as I moved steadily forward. The sun was about to set, leaving the horizon tinted pink with her pending departure. The winter was worse than usual. Normally, between 2 and 3 feet of snow accumulated during the year's cold, dark months. However, before long, spring would always come upon the land, and the patches of white would vanish. But this year had been different. The storms had come early, and the drifts had piled up until there were some over 5 feet deep. It was those very drifts that I was using to hide from the enemy. I couldn't see them, but I sensed their presence lurking close at hand. My friend, Rasby, and I were bent double as we crossed the frozen land, traveling east. It was hard going, since there was no road or path to follow. At least we were kept warm by our exertion and the long maroon cloaks we wore. I paused briefly for Rasby. She had fallen slightly behind. "It'll be dark soon," I whispered, almost to myself, as she caught up with me. She was gasping for breath, and didn't give any answer other than a nod. "We'll be too late, then," I added, just as softly. It would have been better to wait and let Rasby catch her breath, but the sunlight was vanishing from the sky quickly. We had to press on. There simply wasn't enough time left. "Do you see anything, Myra?" Rasby whispered too loudly. "Quiet," I hissed, pulling her to the ground and scanning the landscape for movement. After a few seconds, I relaxed a little. It didn't appear that she had given away our position. I motioned for Rasby to remain silent as we continued forward into the most exposed part of the terrain. I was practically crawling on my hands and knees as we crossed the open patch of land. After traveling another 50 yards, I could hear Rasby behind me, wheezing even louder than before. Internally, I wished she hadn't insisted on coming. She was going to get us both caught. She was only a year younger than me, but she wasn't ready for this kind of challenge. Rasby was my friend, but sometimes she seemed more like the annoying little sister I'd never had. I glanced back and saw that her pudgy face was bright red. Several clumps of brown, frizzy hair were sticking out from her customary pigtail braids. If the situation hadn't called for silence, I would have laughed. At least there was a somewhat determined gleam in her light brown eyes. The going was much easier when we reached the next snowdrift. It provided a barrier from hidden watchers in the south. I still had to bend over slightly to keep my head and shoulders from being seen. Rasby was nearly short enough that she could have walked upright. I glanced back to make sure she hadn't carelessly decided to risk it. An abrupt noise made me drop to the ground again. Rasby followed my example. I closed my eyes to listen. There was the sound of crunching snow. Someone was approaching our position from due south, where the Paramount lay. The Paramount was the village where I had lived the entire 16 years of my life. It was the most important location in the land of the clan. The footsteps drew nearer and nearer. On the edge of my vision, I saw Rasby's eyes dart around rapidly. I readied myself to run, hoping she was doing the same, although she had little chance of escaping a pursuer. I might be forced to leave her behind. Suddenly, a form came vaulting over the top of the snowdrift we were crouched behind. Rasby squeaked with fright. Before I could even get to my feet, the young man had seized my shoulder. "Got you," he announced, with a mischievous gleam in his blue eyes. "Cole!" I gasped, somewhere between anger and relief. "What are you doing?" Cole laughed softly and shook his head to free it of loose snowflakes. Then he reached up to brush the hair off his forehead. There was a few unusual golden highlights that streaked his black locks. The moment he removed his hand, the hair he had pushed back fell forward again. I glared at him, hoping he could see the anger in my gray eyes. But when he finally met my gaze, he just laughed again. "Come on, Myra, that was pretty funny." "This is serious," I insisted. "We have a job to do." All right," Cole said. "Let's be serious." I could tell from the wry smile Cole flashed me that he wasn't being serious at all. I sighed and turned away, suppressing a smile of my own. It was impossible for me to stay angry with Cole. He was 2 years older than me, but he still had a childish joy about everything. It was frustrating and endearing all at once. Rasby had recovered herself. "Is anyone else out there?" she wondered, nodding toward the Paramount. I didn't see anyone, Cole told her. Hopefully they didn't see you either, I couldn't help adding. Cole shrugged. If they did, there's no way we'd still be sitting here discussing it. Fine, I consented, but we should keep moving. Cole nodded, and the three of us set out toward the east. It didn't take long before Rasby was lagging behind us again. Since the sun was touching the horizon, I didn't slacken my pace to compensate for her. There it is, Cole whispered to me a moment later. He pointed to our destination, which lay 60 yards ahead of us. A 5-foot-long stave had been erected in the snow. A long piece of maroon cloth was tied around the top, blowing freely in the wind. It didn't look like much to the casual observer, but to me, it was a most welcomed sight. I glanced over my shoulder. We had 15, maybe 20 minutes left. Let's go. Cole started moving forward, but I grabbed his arm. Wait, I said. No one's there, Cole argued. No one you can see, I corrected him. Then we'll just go really quickly. I shook my head. Wait, I told him again. Cole sighed, but yielded to my will and plopped down in the snow. I sat beside him. Rasby joined us a moment later. At first, the landscape remained deserted. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably less than 5 minutes, I saw movement. It's Bala, I hissed. She was a small girl about my age, with short black hair. If she saw us, everything would be over. What should we do? Rasby asked in a trembling voice. She was biting her lower lip in a way that she only did when she was afraid. Cole shrugged. Maybe she'll go away. I checked the sun. We were all running out of time. We need a distraction, I whispered. If one of us can lead her away, the other two have a chance of making it. Cole nodded his agreement, but Rasby looked uncertain. Rasby, you'll be the distraction, I told her. She'll catch me, Rasby cried. I was surprised that her teeth didn't go through her lip with this exclamation as they chomped down on it fretfully. Possibly, I admitted. Hopefully you can get far enough away that she'll turn back. By that time, Cole and I will have... Rasby cut me off with a high-pitched whimper. I can't! I'm scared! I know, I said, gritting my teeth and trying to be gentle, but sometimes sacrifices need to be made. There was indecision on Rasby's face. I wish she would just suck it up and accept the role assigned to her. Why did she follow me all this way if she's just going to sit behind a snowdrift and wait for the sun to set, I thought angrily. I can go instead, Cole offered. The tension went out of Rasby's body. Thanks, Cole, she said, smiling weakly at him. We'd have a better chance the other way around, I muttered, but didn't try to argue. The sun would disappear any minute. Cole stole away from us, back the way we had come. Soon after, I saw him about 20 yards to my left. He was pretending to creep towards Bala and the stave, moving along stealthily, but being just clumsy enough to catch Bala's attention. It worked. She saw him and started forward to investigate. A moment later, she was running towards him. I didn't wait to see if Cole would escape. Instead, I sprinted toward the scrap of maroon cloth. Rasby was somewhere behind me, trying to keep up on her short, thick legs. Out of nowhere, a figure lunged at me from behind a snowbank. I twisted away reflexively and locked eyes with the enormous young man who had tried to grab me. He was turning and preparing to give chase. The blood roared in my ears as I pelted back the way I had come, desperate to escape his huge, outstretched hands. I passed Rasby, and she turned to follow me, her eyes wide with panic. I could hear our pursuer closing the distance between himself and us with gigantic strides. Go left, I yelled back to Rasby, who was about 4 feet behind me. It took her a moment to process my words, and then she swerved to the left, and I swerved to the right. Fortunately, the brute behind us went after Rasby, since she was closer to him. I peeled away from them and twisted around, heading back toward the stave at full speed. The sun was almost completely below the horizon. It was too late to be cautious. I threw myself forward, heedless of danger. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a maroon-clad figure racing toward me from the opposite direction. I couldn't tell if it was Bala, Cole, or someone completely different. Putting on another burst of speed, I made it to the stave and reached up to seize the piece of cloth. It came loose in my hand. I held it up in the air above my head and cried out, "Victory!" The figure who had been charging, it was Bala, pulled up just in front of me. "No fair," she muttered, spitting contemptuously into the snow. I ignored her complaint and called in a loud voice, "The game is over. I've secured the token. Everyone can come out." There was a moment of utter stillness where Bala and I seemed to be the only living beings in the world. And then I saw Cole heading toward me. From the other direction, Rasby and the guy chasing her, Jace, came walking over. Rasby's face had gone paler than the snow. Several more figures emerged from nearby snowdrifts, walking our way. Counting them in my head, I turned to Bala. "Where are Larna and Flant?" She scowled. "They went home almost an hour ago." "Again?" I asked in disgust. "Why do they keep ditching?" Bala just shook her head. She had a small face with a funny little turned-up nose. It twitched whenever she said something indirectly mean. Her nose twitched quite a lot. She was clever, and could look anyone straight in the eye and tell them a bald-faced lie without batting so much as an eyelash, even though it was against the rules of our people. Cole reached us first. "You almost had me, Bala," he said, giving her an encouraging smile. "If you hadn't turned back when you did, I'm sure you would have." Bala shrugged. "Wouldn't have mattered much since Myra got past Jace." Bala turned to glare at Jace. "Why didn't you catch Myra?" she snapped at him. He had to think for a minute. "I was closer to Rasby." Bala rolled her eyes at his simple answer. Jace was completely unremarkable in every way, save for his size. He was almost 2 feet taller than me, long-limbed, and covered in muscle. However, everyone knew Jace's incredible strength came at the expense of his brain. There was a rumor that he had been planning on to request a transfer to a new village when he turned 20 the following year and was considered an adult. Since the numbers and time management skills which ran the Paramount had never come easily to Chase, I wouldn't have been surprised if it was true. I could see him going straight to the barracks. The barracks was the closest of the other villages to the Paramount. It was where our soldiers lived. We called them soldiers, and they did train for combat, but there had never once been so much as a real skirmish in the land of the clan. Mostly they were responsible for transporting all the goods, food, clothing, wood, etc., from village to village as the items were needed. Loading and unloading the crates and boxes all day kept them in good physical shape, as did all the time they spent traveling between the different villages in the land of the clan. It sounded menial and unimportant to me, but I figured Jace would be perfect for the position. "I told you Myra would be one of the greatest threats," Bala growled. Jace wrinkled his forehead. "Oh yeah, I'm sorry," Bala cut him off. "Why is it so hard for you to figure this stuff out? You should have caught Myra and then caught Rasby, provided she hadn't run off crying." It was rather amusing to see Jace being scolded by a girl half his height. Bala could be a tiny terror when the mood took her. "I'm sorry," Jace started again. This time it was Cole who interrupted. "Bala, lay off, will you?" Jace was Cole's best friend, and Cole hated when people picked on him. Cole turned to Jace. "Next time, just remember to keep an eye on that one." He pointed at me, and I gave them a coy smile. "You really did a good job," he assured Jace. "You would say that, since he's your team's best player," Bala announced. Her nose twitched. A second later, 2 more figures joined us. It was Tiara and Tyria, a pair of sisters slightly younger than Rasby. They could almost have passed for twins. Their eyes, mouths, and even the shapes of their bodies were identical. Everything except their noses. Between the 2 of them, they had exactly the right amount of nose for each, but it was poorly divided. The older one, Tiara, had a bulbous nose, too large for her face. The other, Tyria, had hardly any nose at all. "Where have you 2 been?" I demanded. The pair were supposed to have rendezvoused with Rasby and myself half an hour ago. "We got caught," Tiara started. "By Jason Flant," Tyria finished. I wondered if the 2 realized how annoying it was when they spoke in that way. "I got caught too," Rasby announced. "It was scary." "More like boring," the sisters told her. "We've been sitting in the snow for an hour, waiting until someone got the token, or the sunset." I turned away from the sisters and Rasby. I could only take so much of their finishing each other's sentences thing. Several more maroon-clad figures joined us as the sun vanished from sight. "We should meet up with the others and then head home," Cole said. Everyone else nodded their agreement, but I cringed internally. "You may have won today," Bala announced, giving Cole and me a malicious smile, "but tomorrow it's our turn to attack."